Welcome back to my basement one more time. We are almost done, guys. I'm talking about with the whole basement video thing. On April 12th or April 19th, we're going to be back in person, so that's going to be awesome. But until then, let us continue with our videos. Grab yourself some paper, hopefully a math notebook, and take careful notes on this. We're starting a new unit, and it looks complicated, but it's actually not. This is easier than Chapter 6 was. Chapter 7 is on something called polynomials, and just as a brief introduction, these expressions you see down here, those are actually called polynomials. I'll go over that in a second. But the reason we have them is because of this. You have just learned how to use exponential equations to find how money grows, for example. Now check this out. Let's say that you want to save money for 8 years. And so over the next 8 years, you are going to save $1,000 every year and invest it. So the first $1,000 that you save, let's say you're investing at 5%, it will have 8 years to grow because, again, like I said, you need your money in 8 years. So let's say that a year goes by and this money grows, and then you decide, okay, I now have another $1,000, so I'm going to invest this also, but this can only grow for 7 years. The following year, you decide you have another $1,000 to invest, and you invest that $1,000, but that's only going to grow for 6 years. A year after that, you invest another $1,000 and so on, right? So what we can end up with is a long expression like this one, where you have the 8th power, the 7th power, the 6th power, the 5th power, and so on. This is called a polynomial. And it's what banks use when they do mortgages. It's what investment companies use when they invest money. And we usually use computers to figure out the values of these things. But in Algebra 1, we learned the basic structure of these polynomials. So a polynomial is very simply any of these expressions you see right here, like the ones you've seen before. It's just an expression of different terms added together. Now, I'm going to be more precise in my vocabulary in just 1 second. All right, so let's go ahead and make a table like this one. You should make it in your notebook. And polynomials are simply mathematical expressions that are made up of one or more monomials. This is called a monomial, and I'm going to write that right here. That's its name, monomial. The prefix mono means one. In other words, this is a term that is just one term. It's an expression with only one term. 2x squared is just one term. So that's called a monomial. We could also say that its degree is 2. It's a second degree monomial because the degree simply refers to the power of the variable. So this is called a second degree monomial. It's also called, if you want to be fancy, a quadratic monomial. The word quadratic means second degree. That's all it is. Can you think of any words that start with mono and indicate one or oneness? Like monopoly, where everything is owned by one person. A monocle. You know, the bad guy in the Nazi movies always has that like one eyeglass. That's called a monocle. Anyways, there are probably a lot of ones that you can think of, but mono just stands for one. All right, let's take a look at the second one. You'll notice that this second polynomial, these are all polynomials, this one has 2 terms. Because it has 2 terms, it's not called a monomial, but it's called a binomial. See, it has 2 terms, 1, 2. That's what I mean by that. So this is a special kind of polynomial that only has 2. And it's called a binomial because it has 2. You could probably think of words that start with bi and mean 2 or 2-ness, like bifocals, glasses where you can see 2 different focuses. Bicycle, has 2 tires, and so on. All right, the degree of this guy, what is his degree? Well, you don't see anything here, but this is x to the 1. So we would say that this is a first degree binomial. A fancy way to say first degree is also linear binomial. If you were to graph y equals 5x equals plus 3, you'd get a line, right? So we call that one linear binomial. Okay, let's try another polynomial. This one has 3 terms, 1, 2, 3. Because it has 3 terms, I bet you can figure out it's not a binomial, but what? It's called a trinomial. So this is called a trinomial. You can probably think of a lot of words that start with tri that mean 3, like a tricycle, a tripod. What's that dinosaur called? A triceratops something. There's a dinosaur called the tri and it has 3 horns. You guys probably know the name. All right. And the highest degree, well, the degree is, look at the highest exponent. It's 3 here. So this will be a third degree trinomial. If you want to be really fancy, you could call it a cubic trinomial. But you could also call it third degree trinomial. And these are all kinds of polynomials. Because the prefix poly means many. That's what it means. I'm going to go put that there. That means many. And you can probably think of words that start with poly that have to do with many or manyness. Like a polygon. It's a shape with many sides. What other words start with poly? Can you think of any? No, not police. That's different. That's a different thing. Every year some kid says, police! No, sorry. All right. Keep on going. This one has 4 terms. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have a special name if it has 1 term. It's called a monomial. Special name for 2 terms, a special name for 3 terms. But if it has 4 or more, we just call it a polynomial. Just a general polynomial. And poly means many. So this just has many terms. So we got 1, 2, 3, and after 3 we're just like, it just has a lot. Call it many. Okay? Technically, these monomials, binomials, and trinomials are also polynomials. Polynomials is everything. But we have special names if it has 1, 2, or 3 terms. So anyways, this guy would have a 4th degree because its highest power is a 4. And we call this a 4th degree polynomial. It does have a special name too. We could call it a quartic polynomial, but you don't really need to know that. You can know that if you want though. All right, so let's take a look at this next one. This next one only has 2 terms. So what's it called? That's right, it's a binomial. It's a binomial again, just like this one. They're both binomials because they have 2 terms. And what's its degree? Even if I put a 7 here, for example, the degree is still going to be 8. This is still 8th degree because what you do is you look for the highest power. So we would say that this is an 8th degree binomial. Kind of like this one. This one here would have been an 8th degree polynomial of some kind if I kept on going. There's also a fancy word for 8th degree. It's octic, but you don't need to know that. And lastly, this guy is a little weird because he has more than 1 letter in its variables, but this guy is only 1 term. He's still a monomial. And in order for, wait, hang on. Let me write that first before I start talking. Monomial. In order for a monomial to be a binomial, you'd have to have a plus in there. So for example, if I had 3x squared plus y cubed, that would be a binomial because they have 2 terms because the plus and the minus separates the terms. If they're just being multiplied together, it's still 1 term. And now the tricky part is this. Because this monomial has 2 different kinds of letters, finding the degree is a little tricky. What you actually have to do is you need to add these exponents up. So this would be called a 5th degree monomial or a quintic monomial. Okay? Just another example of that, for example, if I were to say, oh, by the way, before I go there, this 3x squared plus y cubed, this would be a 3rd degree binomial. I'll go ahead and write that. Why not? Because with a binomial, you look at each individual term and the highest power will be the degree of the binomial. Here, though, it's a monomial and it just happens to have 2 different letters. So you're going to have to add those exponents together. Let me just do one other example over here on the side. Well, I can do it under. If you had 3a to the 6b and c squared, this would be what degree? Kind of trick question. It'd be 9th. Because just add the exponents together. B to the A has a 6, the B has a 1, and C has a 2. 6 plus 1 plus 2 gives you 9. And even if I added something like, plus 5a, this would still be 9th degree because this term here has a degree of 9. And if I add the 5a, it would then be a binomial again. Okay, so the first part of this lesson is just on learning the names and the vocabulary. What we're going to be doing in the second part of the lesson is really easy. We're going to be adding these things together, subtracting them and stuff like that. And you're going to find that's not hard at all. If you just take notes, pay attention, pause the video, try it out, I 100% guarantee that you'll understand it. You've got this. Okay? I'll see you in the next video.